When inspecting the service, the ComSop states that we need to inspect the service disconnect, note any overheating, physical damage, as well as what the rating is and the means of disconnect. So let's take a look at it in this building. With commercial properties, it's much better labeled than, let's say, a residential property. And so we're going to take a look at this particular building with the multiple services and see if we can identify the main service disconnect. A building is required to have just one main service disconnect, one means to shut the building off. But there are a couple of exceptions. One, a building may have multiple mains, especially if it's a building that's been absorbed to other buildings. And if there are multiple disconnects, they need to be clearly labeled and identified. The other would be an example of a multi-tenant space where there's not one main disconnect, but in fact, we can have up to 6 disconnects so long as they're clearly labeled and easily identified from one clear location. So we're looking for the main disconnect, or if it's in the case of 6 or less, then 6 clearly identified disconnects in one single location. But as a rule, there should be one single disconnect per occupancy. This is the main disconnect for this occupancy. It's clearly labeled as main disconnect for suite 400. While there's other disconnects here, if this is our inspection for suite 400, this is the single main disconnect, clearly identified. This particular disconnect on this side is not clearly identified. It is occupied by this meter, but if this is our inspection, this meter and disconnect coincide with each other. Same basic principles for inspection, 30 inches, 36, 78. On this label plate here, it will be stamped what our amperage, our voltage, and our phase will be. In this case, it's 400 amp, and our voltage is 208, 120. So those are the items that you're going to identify in your report, and I typically include a photo of that label plate. Not all service disconnects need to be this size. They could actually be located anywhere in the building. They could be just one single panel board that has the label main or main service disconnect at the top or bottom where that single disconnect is located. The important thing is to try to locate it and try to trace it. In some buildings, it's located next to the meter. In some buildings, it's located directly behind the meter on the inside of the building. In this case, it's located here on the outside of the building in the array of the rest of these service disconnects. The most important thing is to try to identify them. And one of the key tools an inspector carries is their camera for the purpose of documentation and memorializing the service disconnect as it sits in the building.